"I feel strong at extreme altitude" is the most dangerous sentence a climber can say. Man, that is a chilling thought, isn't it? Welcome, everyone. We're diving right into today's explainer by confronting a pretty grim reality of Mount Everest. We're looking at how profound internal insecurities and honestly, just unchecked ego manifest as deadly overconfidence in the death zone. When your own mind tricks you into feeling invincible in a place where human life literally isn't meant to exist, the results are absolutely catastrophic.
So let's get into this safety explainer. Today, we're unpacking the tragic and frankly highly preventable fatalities of 5 recent inexperienced climbers on Everest. By breaking down these specific cases, our goal is to identify the lethal warning signs of amateurs who somehow convince themselves that money or ego can replace actual mountaineering skill.
Section 1. The Danger of Everest Amateurs. Let's start our postmortem and really single out these common warning signs.
To really understand these tragedies, we have to group these climbers by their core psychological failures. We've got Taggart Slade, who perfectly represents physical ignorance. Then there's Allegra Fontaine, Warren Ossie, and Martin Crumai, all driven by what we can call performative ego. And finally, Sebastian Moore, who was completely crushed by external pressure. When you look at the data, it's crystal clear. Budget operators blindly accepting falsified resumes basically roll out the red carpet for these exact psychological vulnerabilities to turn fatal. Section 2. Fitness will not save you. Let's talk about physical ignorance on the ice.
Okay, moving to the notorious Khumbu icefall, we hit our first massive red flag. Meet 29-year-old gym owner Taggart Slade. Taggart somehow assumed that surviving a grueling daily CrossFit routine would naturally translate into technical mountaineering skill. His physical arrogance was just astounding. Since he'd never actually worn crampons on real ice before, he relied completely on his arm strength to muscle his way across terrifying gaps, literally gripping the fixed lines with his bare hands. So, you know what happens next. When the ladder inevitably flexed under his weight, his total lack of footwork left him suspended and completely helpless.
Because his expedition company prioritized gym fitness over actual, real-world ice experience, Taggart simply did not have the required skills in his toolkit. He even flat-out refused a secondary practice session with his Sherpa Nima. And ultimately, his inability to execute a basic weight transfer on the ice cost him his life. While he was hanging there awkwardly, a sudden 3-second Serac collapse swept both him and the ladder straight into the crevasse below. It just goes to show, sheer physical strength means absolutely nothing if your muscle memory doesn't know what to do with it.
Section 3. When ego ignores Sherpas. This is exactly where performative ego turns deadly.
15 feet. That is the exact distance that killed 34-year-old influencer Allegra Fontaine. Allegra completely fabricated her climbing resume to a budget operator just to get onto the mountain and churn out social media and podcast content. And then, going totally rogue against the direct, explicit orders of her Sherpa, Furba, she actually unclipped from the safety line. She stepped exactly 15 feet off the marked route for no other reason than to frame a photograph. A hidden snow bridge collapsed, and she plunged straight into a crevasse.
What we're seeing here is a stark, almost unbelievable clash of mindsets. You really have to contrast the quiet, data-driven expertise of the Sherpas, who are intensely focused on strict turnaround times and oxygen math, against amateurs like hedge fund manager Warren Ossie. Warren essentially let his promises to his investors completely override basic survival protocols. He treated the summit of Everest like it was just another line item on his quarterly report.
Tracking Warren's fatal summit push reveals this brutal cascade of errors. He was moving incredibly slowly, but demanded his oxygen flow be maxed out at 4 liters a minute. He boldly blew right past his 10 a.m. turnaround time. And when his Sherpa, Kancha, made the call to turn back to save his own life, Warren just kept pushing on alone, passing the south summit hours too late. He completely mismanaged his oxygen and pushed past every warning sign until his body simply shut down from the impossible biological math.
200 feet. Warren collapsed and died a totally meaningless 200 feet from the summit. Now, why does this matter? Because it proves without a shadow of a doubt that sheer financial willpower and professional success cannot negotiate with the raw physics of extreme altitude. It doesn't care who you are. The oxygen runs out at the exact same rate, regardless of why you're up there.
Section 4. The Deadly Biology of Altitude. Beyond the visible ego, we have to confront the mountain's silent killers, where extreme altitude actively hijacks your brain.
Let's examine high-altitude cerebral edema, or HASE. This is a terrifying condition where your brain literally swells against your skull.
Enter retired Army Colonel Martin Crinny, 56, who treated the mountain like it was one of his subordinates. He brought his 30 years of military authority straight to the ice, actively ignoring his Sherpa's direct, desperate warnings as HASE slowly but surely eroded his cognitive function.
The physical progression of haze is terrifying to watch. It starts with these waxy white patches of frost snip, then devolves into clumsy, irregular crampon placements, and leads to intense, undeniable confusion. But Martin thought his military discipline meant he just needed to push through the wall, right? Instead, he pushed through critical medical warning signs until he actually hallucinated that he was already safely down at Camp 3. He unclipped from the fixed line while standing on unprotected blue ice, lost his purchase, and fell 1,800 feet to his death.
Then there's the other silent killer, high-altitude pulmonary edema, or HAPE. This is a fatal altitude illness where fluid literally fills the lungs, effectively drowning the climber from the inside out. For 23-year-old Sebastian Moore, the crushing external pressure of living up to his father's 1996 Everest legacy caused him to actively hide the lethal symptoms of HAPE from his assigned guide, Dawa.
Sebastian experienced all the classic red flags. A persistent dry cough that deepened into wet, gurgling spasms. He physically couldn't lie flat because of the overwhelming sensation of drowning. But his deeply seated internal insecurity led him to suffer silently through these terrifying symptoms, zipped up inside his sleeping bag. His very last audio diary stated he just didn't want to be the reason his team had to turn around. So he suffocated quietly just so he wouldn't inconvenience anyone. Absolutely heartbreaking.
Section 5. The true cost of inexperience. Who is actually paying the price for these untested egos wandering around the death zone?
The lessons here, as you can see, are written in blood. Physical fitness does not equal technical ice training. Faking competence is a literal death trap. Your financial and military success mean absolutely zero to the biology of high altitude. And staying silent while you're sick? That's deadly, not brave. The main takeaway for us is that deep-seated personal insecurities are the actual root causes of these catastrophic errors.
And tragically, the true cost often lands squarely on those who do absolutely everything right. Take 28-year-old Sherpa Furba, for example. He bravely descended into that crevasse to save Allegra, the influencer who unclipped for a selfie, remember? Well, during the 45-minute extraction, a shifting wall of glacial ice completely crushed Furba's ankle. His professional climbing career was permanently ended right then and there. He now runs a tea house, all because someone else felt they needed social media content.
So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. Did the mountain's extraordinarily harsh environment kill these 5 climbers? Or did their own ego, their profound ignorance, and their obsessive desire to perform competence simply execute the death sentence they already wrote for themselves at base camp? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Remember, respect the mountain, but more importantly, respect your own limits. Catch you next time.